It might be weird to hear, but I never played Gungrave. Despite the fact that I did own a PS1, PS2, not a PS3, unfortunately, but I honestly it was capable, but it never was on my radar. Nobody I knew ever really talked about the game. But I feel like to a certain degree that's almost irrelevant to the anime because the anime tells a story that is so comparable to the best parts of Cowboy Bebop. And there's a reason for that. And that's because, not a lot, but a few of the people who worked on Cowboy Bebop, as well as Trigun, also had a hand in Gungrave. Some of its best elements, honestly, whether it just have been writing or storyboarding, there was a little bit of crossover when it came to this. Not a lot, but enough that you can see the roots therein. And honestly, Gungrave could be counted amongst one of the best of some of the sci-fi gunslinger stories out there. The only downside to that is the fact that, for the most part, the beginning parts of the series have nothing to do with the game. Not really. It's not until about episode 16 that the story even has any real involvement with the series. And it's really funny too, because the biggest thing that relates this series to Trigun is the suffering of the hero and the depth of the backstory. And considering that the story and the designs were made by the original creator of Trigun, Yasuhiro Naito, is very telling. If you've seen Trigun or even Blood Blockade Battlefront, the series that Yoshihiro Naito creates, and even when they go on to have anime adaptations that very often don't really stick to the main story that much, there's just this overall likability to the characters that he creates. And I have to give props to the animation team because they decided that if they were going to adapt Gungrave, they would make something that just really fleshed out the backstory of Brendan Heat or Beyond the Grave. And what starts off as a story about two young punks living on the streets with nothing to their name, whose friends could live or die at any moment, joining a crime syndicate, becoming deeply embedded in that syndicate's operations, the story of betrayal, the story of Brendan and Harry, two guys who finally had a chance to come up in the world. The only downside was that while Brendan was loyal to the organization, Harry had his own goals and desires. And it was through a betrayal that Brendan became something more, something deadly, and then sought out vengeance for that betrayal and carved a path of carnage. The thing about it is, I've always had a hard time connecting the two stories. The story of Brendan Heat, that tells a story very similar to Spike Spiegel, and how he came up in the world, and how he and his friend Vicious used to be thick as thieves, but because of a woman that they loved, they ended up drifting apart as time went on. And the story of Beyond the Grave, who is very much this kind of mixture of Vash the Stampede and Dante from Devil May Cry, because he can fight in the most ludicrous and stylish ways with abilities that go beyond the pale of humans, but he's out on this quest of vengeance and nothing will stop him till he gets the job done. And he does so with so much style and panache, but with this serious grimace on his face at all times, because he takes no enjoyment out of taking down the people he used to call friends. And the real jarring part is some of his friends who were in the crime syndicate end up becoming these grotesque and freaky monstrosities through the use of science, but that's how Brendan was able to come back for his vengeance, as it were. And I'm not saying that the story is bad, no, not by any means. It's just that the shift into the surreal and the supernatural feels deeply jarring, but it gives a lot of depth to some of the boss fights. Because I've had a friend who had Gungrave, and I remember a lot of the boss fights because they were up against grotesque monstrosities that used to be human, and Grave would gun them down with nary a second thought. But then you get into the Gungrave animated series, and there's backstories between Grave and some of these people. Some are sorry for what happened to Grave. Some revel in the power that they've obtained. There's just something surreal about watching this series. But by no means does that mean you shouldn't watch it. The Gungrave animated series, is a masterpiece of animation, of storytelling, of style and substance. It's just, there's too much substance almost. It just surpasses the original video game in a way that I just was not ready for. Because the Gungrave video game, it's not that it's bad, it's just that it's really straightforward to a certain degree. And to flesh out the backstory to this amount really took me off guard. And with a new Gungrave video game on the horizon, Gungrave GORE, it would behoove you to check this series out to potentially see just how deep Grave, beyond the grave, and his vengeance actually can be, and the hurt that drives him forward. If there is one thing that really does help to connect the Gungrave anime to the games, it is Grave and his connection to the character of Mika Asagi, who has a special connection with the woman that Grave used to love, and is the real driving factor why Grave fights so hard to preserve Mika's life. And I hope all of that really does carry over to GORE, because I feel that if it doesn't, you end up losing something really important to the series that connects it back to the wonderful anime. I think that the one female character who has this weird kind of scouter on is Mika, which means we've gotten another bit of a time skip, as in the original anime and video game, she's 13. Well, around when you actually see her in the anime. And in Overdose, the second game, she's 18, so 3 years have passed. So I wouldn't be surprised if another 5 years have passed, and this is a bit of an older Mika. Although why her hair has gone from silver to this kind of dark shade of black is kind of beyond me. But I really would be distraught if Mika is not featured in this new Gungrave game. Because having Grave taking orders from someone who isn't Mika, I don't know. After everything that has happened through the course of the series, and how Mika has always played such an important part, yeah, that really would do a disservice to what's been built up for the series over time. But tell me, are you a fan of Gungrave? Did you originally watch the anime, or did you play the PlayStation game first? Did you play the sequel Overdose? And are you looking forward to Gungrave GORE? Let me know your thoughts and feelings in the comment section below. If you like this video, please like, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell for notification. And until next time, I've been Duuz-Diz-Din, and I will see you later. Bye-bye.